Tonight, I come into your home with a sensitive discussion, one about divorce, eating and destroying thousands of families here in Rwanda and across the world. A man meets a woman. In love, they declare to the world an endless, lifetime commitment. But sometimes the end is inevitable. Divorce could be that end. I'm Isabel Masazera, your host tonight on Primetime Live. And joining me is a man of God, one that has officiated weddings here in Rwanda, thousands of weddings, I must say, Pastor Patrick from Calvary Temple. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. And we also have a human rights activist, one that has definitely gathered thousands of articles, maybe surveys and information about this very topic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You could take us through maybe why you decided to handle this area in particular.
Well, the area has found me home. Like all the issues, I deal with human rights, but most importantly for that topic, I'm a trained lawyer, and I've worked in legal firms a long time ago where sometimes divorce comes to stay. But I also co-founded the Center for Conflict Management in 1999. So divorce or marriage entails a long enterprise of conflict management. So life imposes itself on us.
So Elise Karekezi would rightly say that this is your area. It is something that you're very passionate about.
Not only professionally, I'm a married woman.
Yes.
So it's my area, definitely, marriage, and its negative consequences is the divorce. So,
all right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Pastor, let's go back to the basics.
Yes.
What are some of the root causes of divorce today?
Well, unfortunately, every statistics is showing that divorce rate is growing on a rapid speed. But given my experience with families and counseling and teaching, I have found one prevailing problem. Number one is misunderstanding of the institution of marriage, family institution. When we talk about marriage, people look at other things and they don't understand what entails in marriage. Some people look at, maybe they look at it as a prestigious function.
So you would say it's a lack of understanding of
To
what
me,
marriage is.
It's lack of understanding of what family is. Because marriage or a wedding is an event. But what you're entering into is called family institution. And this family institution has different components that makes it up.
Yes.
You got to understand what it is.
And what are some of those components?
When you get into marriage, first of all, you're opening up your life for another person who probably, an experience that you probably has never experienced. And the other party too is opening up her life for his life. And that alone, if you're not prepared enough to offload yourself to put in another person into your life, you could call it a disturbance of your life. Somebody's entering into your life, but you're not prepared for that. Before you think twice, a third person comes in, a baby comes in.
Yes.
Before you think twice, there is a conflict of different views, different understanding, and each person wants to defend his view.
Yes.
That breaks that union,
Yes.
and it's against actually the life and norms of this institution called marriage.
Yes. I'm going to cross over to you. Now, human rights, that's something that comes into mind when you talk about divorce, yes? But sometimes we feel like, even as the young people, we don't have enough information out there. Pastor talked about knowing what it is that you're getting into. That preparation before getting into marriage is very key. Would you say that there's enough information and sensitization going on today to help marriages stay intact?
Before going into that, first of all, it's much more than a human rights issue here. It's because when you locate the issue of marriage versus divorce into the framework of human rights only, you run the risk of reifying, which is very dynamic things. Pastor Patrick mentioned growing into being one, coming from two. But I agree, though, that part of the problem, because we see divorce is a symptom. What does divorce tells us? What is divorce anyway, when we speak about in our context in Rwanda? Because when you approach the question of this disruption as divorce, you are entering into the arena of law, because you have a legal dissolution of a union. We have to ask ourselves, today in Rwanda, what is the proportion of people who are legally engaged? We'll find out that we'll find many more in the urban areas than in rural areas. So there is only divorce in terms of legal dissolution when there have been legal marriage. That one is very important because we are entering the statistics now. Number two, speaking about the causes, have the causes that we see today tremendously changed from yesterday, or today? It is our capacity to manage the tensions, the contradictions that are occurring today.
Before we get into the contradictions, like you say, what would you say is the main cause here in the Rwandan context, here in Rwanda? What have you seen as the main cause for divorce?
There's not one main cause of divorce. Like all social phenomena, there is complexity. And if you tell me, for example, I hear a lot of people speaking about money being a trouble. Money has always been a trouble for couples when they didn't know home economics, or when they don't manage the funds they have and commonly share the expenses they have. So this is an old problem.
Yes.
When you speak about perhaps some of the things that have changed is change of lifestyle, change of expectations, and only the nuclearization of the institution of marriage. If you agree with me that marriage is a long enterprise of conflict management, you'll agree that today what has dramatically changed is that you have only two people, a woman and a man, solving conflict that entails the life of children, the life of friends, of families. Whereas in ancient time, the engagement in the choice, in the preparation, and in the implementation of marriage entailed many more.
Yes.
So we are left alone to deal with conflict we used to manage in collaboration with friends, families.
But again, when you say these couples are left alone, just the man and the woman, where is the state in that? Where is the church in that? Yes, it is true that today we don't have the aunties, the uncles involved, our parents having a say in our relationships, but we have the pastors to run to.
Exactly. Actually, that's where the point is. Previously, I'm talking about probably the 19th century or back a little bit. When you look back, the issue of marriage wasn't left between a boy and a girl.
Yes.
Because they are not yet mature enough to know what is involved into this union they are getting into. They were bound together by cultural values that constrained them and molded them into some do's and don'ts of life. But this issue of globalization, social media, advancing world, shared information is running the lives of the people crazily, that most of them are dropping up what used to form their moral values.
Yes.
Today, it's difficult to tell a young boy or a young man before marriage and say, you guys, do you understand what you're getting involved into?
Yeah.
That's why I say they don't understand. One, they look at family as something prestigious. I feel good when I walk with such a guy like that. This young man comes and says, well, that's a beautiful lady. I would feel so comfortable to walk with that. But marriage is much more than a show.
Yes.
After that, you get into home. Then when you begin to link up values together, you contradict each other, and none of you has tenacity to give in
Yes.
to the other.
But Pastor,
Yes.
yes, what you say carries a lot of water, but what has been done about it? As the religious leaders,
Exactly.
you are responsible and accountable when it comes to these marriages. You officiate, and they trust that you will lead them with the counsel, the great counsel, and of course guide their footsteps along this journey. At what point do you come in?
I will tell you something. From all fronts, as religious people holding the Bible, we are very much responsible on a very great measure, because this family institution is not man-made in the first place. Read our books. It's only God who said man cannot live alone. He can't make it. Then actually, this man Adam did not think of a solution of his problem, because he was lonely, helpless, and hopeless. And then God made a helpmate. So we who stand on behalf of God, speak on behalf of God, I agree, we have that responsibility into that. We do instruct, we do teach, we do train. But there's a problem here. We don't impose. We are limited in our exercise. And that's how it should be, because love is never dictated to me.
Okay. Pastor, when would you say biblically divorce is permissible? When is it okay for one to divorce?
That is a critical question. In the Bible, divorce is never permitted. And I'm very strong on that.
Okay.
In the Bible, divorce is never permitted. I don't know why God chose that. But in Matthew 5, I will refer to the Bible, of course. In Matthew 5:31, Pharisees came to Jesus, testing him, and asked him, what do you say about divorce? Then Jesus responded to them and said, what does the law of Moses say? They said, Moses told us that if you're tired with that wife, you can give her a certificate of divorce. Jesus said, that is not how it was meant from the beginning. The reason why Moses allowed you to do that, it is because you had hardened hearts. That's why he allowed that to happen. But originally, it wasn't allowed.
And Pastor, all of that is okay. But I'll paint you a scenario.
Yes.
A man comes to your office, lets you know this is the woman I intend to marry. Very happy. 2 years down the road, he's beating up his wife. He's drinking late at night, not providing for his children. He's doing everything that will make it impossible for this young woman to stay with him. Would you advise that couple to stay together?
Well, those circumstances really sounds very good and very, very strong to ignore. But let me tell you something. The impact of divorce to the three components of this family has even far-reaching implications to these two. First of all, you never divorce and leave this union the same way you came into it.
And that is all good. But she's bleeding on the floor.
You're already bleeding at divorce.
Pastor, I'll come back to you for that
Yes.
answer. I
Divorce
still don't have an
cuts
answer.
you into two. You go bleeding, he goes bleeding. The kids bleeding everywhere. Only that it's not physical.
it could be a life-threatening situation, but I'll come to you. What would you say about the same?
Let me first come back what to do, because you have asked the church part, what role do they play? And you have asked also about the states. What the states can help in this matter is an advanced framework of protection, not only for the woman, for the man, but also the family. In the case of Rwanda, for example, if you read carefully the system, you would see that elements have been put in terms of legal apparatus, in terms of protection, to prevent, to protect when it comes. And that's what the states can do. You cannot have the full remedy of the problem from one institution. The church presents its own and the state presents its own. What is missing here is the community and the individuals. And today, you mentioned it, that in your scenario, the issue of responsibility is one. The responsibility to make some gestures in a couple, in a family. What does it entail to be married from the spouses? What are they expected to do to one another and how to behave? So those responsibilities come with the in preparation you spoke about earlier on. So how prepared are they to engage in those responsibilities? That is a learning process. The other thing that is that doesn't come
I'll
is...
interrupt you just a little bit.
Yes.
The Constitution of Rwanda recognizes divorce, right? Yes. When is it okay for a couple to divorce?
When life together becomes a hell.
What exactly is that?
That's what I wanted to speak about. What struck me with couples that come to me, or individuals to come and speak about couple problems, what struck me is almost exactly what I used to hear the generation of my mother, the elder sisters, speaking about. But what has changed is problem-solving skills. So what is hell for me might not be for somebody else.
And I agree with that. But just like I asked him earlier,
Yes.
Are you okay with the fact that it is not permissible? Do you subscribe to that belief that divorce is not permissible? Because if you are speaking according to what the Bible says, no room for divorce. But as a human rights activist, you know that there are situations where someone's rights are not being heard, and
I
they're
would
in a situation that they need to get out of. Yes.
Divorce is not desirable, but can be unavoidable.
Unavoidable. In other words, it's permissible.
Yes, saying that it's permissible is not correct. So it's as if you engage in a marriage with the promise
To get out
part
of
it.
it.
No,
Yes.
because you enter a long commitment that is extremely demanding, and it's demanding every day. So you might choose, you might be well equipped to turn those demands in an enjoyable situation. But it is that. So it is not a matter of permissivity. It is a matter, is it possible to divorce when you have exhausted your desire to live together and the strength to fight for that?
Pastor, I'll come back to you.
Yes.
When we were talking earlier, you made it very clear the Bible is against divorce.
Yes.
But as a man of God, are there times when you would say it's okay to divorce?
Well,
And what are some of those
I
scenarios?
think my strength would be in preparation, in creating right expectation before entering into this covenant of marriage, other than going much on the side of divorce. If need be and there is a life-threatening situation, I would encourage separation for rehabilitation and restoration.
Okay.
But I wouldn't really want to involve into divorce issues. Because something people don't think about divorce It's the impact of divorce on their psychological, emotional,
Yes.
and social life. How much do we measure that cost? We see physical divorce. But let me tell you, once you enter into this covenant, you can't come out of it whole. You're already dying inside, and you can't be the same again. So I don't want to go to that side.
Yes.
But in case there is an issue of life-threatening,
Yes.
I would encourage separation,
Okay.
rehabilitation,
Yes.
and restoration.
With a desire to end up back together.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. All right, Pastor, hold that thought. And when we return back, I would like to engage you a little bit more about love, because it is believed
Exactly.
that it answers all problems.
Exactly.
All right. We now take a short break, and when we return, a lot more to talk about when it comes to the issue that is eating up and destroying families everywhere in the world. You're watching Primetime Live, and remember to join the conversation on Twitter at Isabel Masazera, or you can tweet us at RBA Rwanda. Thank you so much for choosing RTV, and remember to join the conversation on Twitter at RBA Rwanda, and you can as well join me at Isabel Masazera. We're talking about divorce, and with me is a pastor from Calvary Temple, Pastor Patrick. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be here.
You're welcome.
All right, and a human rights activist.
And lecturer, conflict management specialist.
All right, and this is indeed your area. Well, before we went for a short break, I talked about love being the one thing that solves almost all problems. Would you say that love is enough?
Actually, love is more than enough of what we need to make really lasting families, because the Bible says love is patient, and love is not selfish, and love forgives everything. The problem is there's a confusion between love. The Bible talks about agape love. That's the kind of love of God that actually helps people to love other people without loving substances around them. And you mentioned it. One of the problems is that when people say, I'm in love, probably what they love is your eyes. What they love is your cheeks. It's not you. And once you have a scar in the place they loved most, you will be dumped, and that love dies. But love is never selfish. Love gives in, and that's the point of the family. You never come into family union just to take out. Each brings in. It's a traffic of service driven by love. And once it is true love, it's never going to be changed by circumstances. But once your love is on other things, especially these days, a young girl, disadvantaged, poor background, gets here, sees a guy who is a bit well off, and say, well, I'm in love. But the point is, I'm just seeing what is behind and around this guy. That's what's attracting me. And then you call it love. That's not love. It's greed. Capitalistic spirit is taking over.
I'm very glad you brought
us.
that up.
Yes.
I'll bring this to you. Well, there's been allegations. Some men have come out to say, well, the women, especially here at home, are very empowered. And divorce comes very easy because if things go wrong, she can always move on, start a home, and take care of her own children. Would you say this has contributed in any way to the high rates of divorce?
First of all, I would like to really, in our conversations everywhere, to be very careful about the rate of divorce. I've checked the last demographic and health survey and all the statistics. They do not give you clear statistics of divorce in Rwanda. We don't have such a study. We have a perception that can be substantiated, but we don't know exactly how faster. In comparison from before, we don't know.
Yes.
But we see many fragility. Couples, after 4 months, people coming back, and so we are taking the Fuso phenomena. The person comes back home with only birongoranwa, saying that she cannot take it anymore. So perhaps we need to have clear studies to establish what is happening. Perhaps we know more about separations now than before.
That's true.
It is true that Rwanda, in the last 20 years, in terms of gender roles, has transformed dramatically in many ways. Not only legally, women have been empowered in terms of the protection, legal protection, and enjoyment of their rights. There has been a clear move to empower women, and mutation from private sphere to a public sphere is very visible. So this comes with a cost for society, but it cannot be the only cost. We have in parallel urbanization. Most of the Rwandans, more than 60%, used to live in rural areas. We live more and more in town, and we are changing ways of living. That time of transition comes always with a lot of cost in terms of relationship. Particularly, we are moving from deep-rooted dominance of the male figure in society to more balanced.
Thank you for bringing that up, because some of the problems that the men are bringing up, especially coming back to you, Pastor, is they're saying, we cannot be two men in a home. I feel like my wife is too empowered. I can't stand up to her. What do you have to say about that? Don't you think that the church can then come in and play a role in sensitizing and teaching the women how to still enjoy their freedom and be submissive?
The issue of probably putting women down is not of the Bible. It's not of God. Actually, there is no comparison between men and women in the Bible. There's a complementary law, because man is inadequate himself alone, and woman is. And they are totally different in design and purpose. The intention of God was that each of them is not complete without the other. So man needs a woman equally as the woman needs a man. The point, actually, that's why the problem is people need to understand the nature, the original nature of the family and its function. To me, I see it into complementary roles. But I think there is a move that probably has been misunderstood. When you're oppressed, for example, and you're given a chance, sometimes you may go beyond your boundary or misuse that. For me, I believe a woman has a unique role in the family a man cannot play, and a man does. None of the other is superior over the other. They complement each other. But there is a case scenario where it is going beyond control.
What is the church doing about that?
Exactly. What you're doing is teaching, understanding the complementary roles other than competition.
Pastor, take me through the period of time and what exactly happens during preparation before marriage, because I believe that is the point all of this should be taught. How long?
It's very unfortunate that at the point of preparation to marriage, we are inheriting some already formed behaviors and lifestyle of these teenage boys and girls who never has been nurtured before. When they come from wherever they come from, they think they are able to do something, and they have preconceived ideas of all about marriage.
Before.
And yes, and when you want to pull them back to the original nature of marriage, they have preconceived ideas. I think everything is dying from the family setting, because family naturally is the incubation of humanity, the molding of moral values into this young teenage. Once the family is broken, a teenager comes to 18, 20 years, there is a formation. He or she is already formed. So even when you take them into counseling, for us, we have youth groups. We go into details talking about what is it all about courtship.
So you start from when they are teenagers and they grow into...
Exactly. And they are already formed in their own way. Actually, if you want to trace the problem of this, you just trace it into two sources. One, I don't think it's irrelevancy of culture, but cultural values used to bind us together and mold certain values. Now, it's no more emphasized. It's no more forward now.
I'll come back to that.
Cast out in the air.
I'll come back to that. Let's just talk about children, because there's no way you can talk about divorce and not focus on children. When going through divorce, this is something that is quite heartbreaking when two people have to share custody and the battles that go on, the back and forth that is involved. How are children protected here in our nation during this period?
Well, if you ask my legal background, I would say that we have quite satisfactorily framework, again, legal and policy frameworks to address the problems of children, not only as individuals, but also as members of families. So it's not only empowerment of women that has happened in Rwanda here, it is value given also to the family. So now, you tell me legal rights do not solve every problem. But let's come back on some of the issues discussed here with Pastor about what the church does. And the pastor spoke about formation that they inherit of people already formed. And they take them back on courtship. I think one of the problems we are facing, let's remind ourselves, society has not changed very much. Society has kept on changing.
Evolving.
From the Homo sapiens we knew to the urban person who's wearing outfit today. So what we have to ask ourselves, what has happened in that time that we are not doing, or perhaps we are doing, we don't know, and unpack. When I speak about gender roles, for example, what I've seen and what has changed is that women are still expected to play the roles as women in the family, those expectations make men leave their family and go to ask for them to be their wives. And yet, they are also expected to play the traditional role of the man as breadwinner. And that makes a great difference. Because you are expected as a woman today to be able to play your traditional role, but you have to go out there, learn to live out there to earn the living of a family, and to be able to combine those roles.
Yes.
It is when the dosage is not well done that we have problems.
I have heard that argument before, but sometimes I pause. Because you see, back in the African traditional society, the wife was still working. She was going to the garden to dig, which is the equivalent of us going to work in the morning. And she would still come back home and make her husband a meal and still become a mother to the children.
Yes.
So most of the times when this is used as a reason, as a catalyst, don't you think that's an excuse?
No, it's not an excuse. Why? The mode of production. When you agriculture, because that was the
main
key, the main activity, and still is in Africa for the woman, was in the surroundings of the home. So in terms of practicability, coming from your shamba and having your baby near, having the cousin helping you deal with the baby and come back to do the food, was another job than coming here at 9 o'clock, be able to do your program and come home. Perhaps your companion is at home and is feeling lonely, not having the care he would have expected. He has been seeing his mom giving to his dad. So that's in this expectation and in this our inability or our impreparation to be able to
juggle all of that.
to juggle on.
You make a very strong case there. But I would like to take you away from that for a little bit and talk about divorce itself and the law here in Rwanda. Now, I understand there's a period of 6 months after you file for legal separation just for the couple to be monitored to see are they going to go through with the divorce or is there a chance for reconciliation. Do you think that that's enough time? And Pastor, I come to you. Given the time the couple takes to go through counseling and now only 6 months for them to determine whether or not this couple should call it quits, is this enough time?
I think that time can be enough or less than what is required, depending on the gravity of the issue you're handling, and depending also on the nature of the people and their willingness actually to reconcile.
What is done during that time to provide support?
Well, I am not sure about the legal aspect, but I will tell you in the pastoral service. What we do actually is going into detail to assess the root cause of the bitterness between the two. That's number one. Number two is to show them how the Bible addresses that and ask them to adopt the Bible principles in solving that. But one thing that is very pertinent and very key into this reconciliation and rehabilitation process is the willingness of the two. Are they willing to change? There are different levels. There's a level where you find some of them have already made up their mind
and they're ready to.
They don't even want to listen. It's
Pastor,
like you're wasting time.
Let's concentrate on that for a little bit and I'll come back to you. So they're willing to part ways and they're calling it quits. Let's go for the divorce. How long does it take to get a divorce?
Depending on the choices of the formula of divorce. There are basically in the Rwandan law 2 main ways of divorcing. By consensus, you agree to come together and you observe that your marriage project has failed, and you agree to go to the judge, to court, and to ask by consensus.
And how
part.
long is the period?
When you choose that path, it means you. They call it a divorce without fault, without offense. So that's one can go pretty fast. It means you agree, munama y'umuryango, because they send you to the family council. You agree on all the arrangement going around, not only your separation, but also the management of properties acquired together, or depending on the regime you have chosen also. So that's one, and the amendment done last year to the family law in Rwanda have quickened this process. It becomes another problem when you decide to accuse, an accusatory process, a litigation. In that context, one of the partners decides to sue the other and has to establish yes, so the breaches of the laws of marriage. Of course, that's the debate. You bring your arguments, the other one, the lawyers, etc. So even in that circumstances, the last amendment of the Rwandan law has quickened the process, because you might have situation of life-threatening and also the willingness not to keep the children in the situation of a major conflict of that time.
Well, yeah, and thank you so much for that. The government has done a great job to provide support and come in when there's need, when there's a life-threatening situation, and there's all these platforms for people to speak out. But you see, divorce is still a huge issue, and it would not be fair to leave tonight without looking at some of the ways we can mitigate this problem. We can curb this cancer that is eating up families. What would you say the church can do to support families?
What I would tell our viewers, number one, the family need to be rectified where we are. If you're going to solve this problem, we start with the prevailing families to review the foundation of their marriage and the purpose of their marriage. Family institution is never, whoever enters into this institution should not be selfish, should decide to live for others. If you fail to have that attitude of living for others, you have a very poor foundation of family. Point number two, that is...
Pastor, allow me interrupt you before we even go to point number two. I'm very passionate about follow-up and accountability. This is how we live as Rwandans. Are there programs that help follow up these couples after they've left the church and the wedding is done? Is there a committee they're answerable to people to help them walk this journey? Yes,
like in our church, and I think in many churches, there is a committee of couples that are in charge of accompanying those young couples into this process of knowing all about it. But the point is, before, we need to work on that before.
Yes.
Today, as we are talking, we have families where kids at the age of 3 are put into boarding schools, taken care of, a maid paid, just paid to take care of them. These kids are lacking that psychological, emotional connection of parent. You know, parenting is much beyond material substance. It has to do with emotional, psychological impact that you put into this child to give a balanced sense. Once you have kids that are raised with maids, you don't expect them to raise families. If you're going to succeed, let's start with these families. Every family member must know that the sign of maturity is to give my life for others. I have decided to give my life to this young lady. She had decided to give me her life. Nothing can separate us. We have decided that before time. So that's the only solution, because that's when we create an environment that will raise people balanced in every aspect. I saw the statistics of the street children here in Rwanda. Most of them has parents. But living in this home, it's much worse than living on the street.
Yes.
Can you imagine that scenario? If you're going to stop this scourge that is killing our people, we must come back to our senses. Let's draw some values that used to help us, good values from our culture, and keep them even as we develop. If we don't have, I encourage my viewers to come and see the Bible values.
That's a very moving
Come and see
speech
the Bible
from your
values.
pastor. I would like to hear what you have to say. I know we're running out of time, but from your side, what would you say can
This
be
is
done?
love. What I would like to say, my message of hope, first of all, I'm afraid I've heard about many cases I've observed. I think most of the problems are common to all the generational problems. When you speak about money, presence, care, etc., they are cross-cutting. Across the board, you have all social status having the same problems. What it tells us, it's we have to improve the capacity after having given them their love, and I agree very much with that, the responsibility to take care of the children that we have given life to. But there is another aspect. Let me be just very practical. Here is a boy who all of a sudden has to marry. The person believes by buying a nice suit, nice shoes, and having enough money to have a nice car to come there, it is enough. The girls the same. They have never operated a home. They've never taken care of their siblings. They've never gone to the market to know how much is lenga-lenga. And all of a sudden, they have to give him portion.
Yes.
Ration. They've never even bothered to know that their parents were doing this business.
Yeah.
So now they have to run a home. Problems arise around those small things. Home economics never know. And what tells you, what thing that strikes me, and I would like us to really reconsider. You see a couple of people coming to prepare their marriage. When the girl speaks about birongoranwa, it's as if she wants to have the microwave today, the gas cook today,
Yes.
the flat TV today, the bedsheet, a new house in a different neighborhood today. I've been seeing our parents saving for having the TV, the first TV come at home, and it is an event. Why do we want to have it? And if you don't take responsibility to buy bedsheet for yourself, how will you take responsibility for your bedroom? This is a question. It's as if the wedding is the business of the family and friends. So you are going around having money to have the wedding you cannot afford, your parent cannot afford. None of your saving, if you have any, has entered it. You don't even take responsibility for your wedding day. How will you confront the everyday problems of managing small resources? If they don't give you that car, will you stay in that home? Of course, you'll say that he's drinking that money that should pay you that big car. Of course, you would say that you want to have your wife present without saying a nice words to your woman. How will she find the love to care about you if you don't even ask her how was her day? So, actually, we don't, in our upbringing, we are missing a point. We don't accompany our children to responsible people. And we want them to become overnight. Never have a bank account. All of a sudden, you go and get a loan. Of course, the money you borrow for your house, you'll buy a car for that, and your trouble starts. And then next Saturday, you have to look good in the next wedding, and the other Saturday as well. So I think let's get back to the basic.
Yes.
Let's not only, the maids can be even good. but are they supervised?
Exactly.
The problem is not the maid, is what's your terms of reference for your maid?
Yes.
If you want your maid to be a substitute for yourself,
but the children will always do what they saw their parents do. So it takes us back to
And
what
the
Pastor
TV,
said.
and the
The maids
TV.
cannot
Yes.
be raising our children.
No, it is not their they are helpers.
Yes.
They come to support. It's support staff for your project of marriage. So are you in charge? Have you been prepared to be in charge? I think that's what is missing, the problem-solving skills. But things have not dramatically changed.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for taking out the time to come join me, talk about an issue that I believe is affecting everyone out there.
Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you so much for your comments, for your questions on Twitter. And remember, the conversation still goes on. You can join me at Isabel Masazera on Twitter or at RBA Rwanda. Let's keep the conversation going and let's figure this out together. Well, that's all the time we had today. Remember, when it comes to divorce, it's not something you or myself can ignore. Good night.